Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the H.C. Wainwright 26th Annual Global Investment Conference on September 9th through 11th, 2024. My name is Abby Gray, and I'm an H.C. Wainwright Associate. We are confident that we are going to be able to provide value to you with over 600 companies presenting at the conference in multiple sector tracks devoted to life sciences, cryptocurrency, blockchain and fintech, technology, media and telecommunications, clean tech, metals and mining, and growth. Please join us for one-on-one meetings, corporate presentations, and panels that will be available live and streaming on September 9th through 11th. With that said, have a productive and enjoyable day. And I'd like to introduce our first presenter. I'd like to welcome Carrie Claiborne, who is CEO of Adial Pharmaceuticals, a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company focused on the treatment and prevention of addictions and other unmet medical needs.
Thanks a lot, Abby, so much for welcoming me to the conference. Hello, everyone. As Abby said, my name is Carrie Claiborne. I'm the CEO of Adial Pharmaceuticals. Before I begin, let me remind you that we are a public company, and this presentation will include certain forward-looking statements. So I encourage you to review our risk factors on file with the SEC. Adial Pharmaceuticals, again, is a clinical stage biopharm company. We're focused on the treatment and prevention of addictions. Our primary focus is on alcohol use disorder, or AUD. AUD is a major public health problem in the United States. It is estimated to affect over 30 million people in the United States alone. It's the leading cause of death in people aged 15 to 49. It contributes to over 200 different diseases, and it costs the U.S. economy approximately $250 billion a year. Now, despite these enormous costs, just over 7% of people are estimated to seek treatment. And the vast majority of those patients don't seek medical treatment. So less than 2.3 million people are estimated to actually be seeking any kind of treatment for AUD. Now, the reason there are so few people seeking treatment for AUD is because the current medical treatments that are out on the market all have significant barriers to treatment. There's an abstinence barrier where all of the treatments that are available on the market require patients to be abstinent before they can begin treatment, which means they have to stop drinking for a period of time before they can start. There's an efficacy barrier because, as I said, for a patient to go through abstinence, that requires a radical change in their lifestyle. And 90% of the patients that actually do start off being abstinent end up not being abstinent. So it works for a few, but not for a lot. For those patients that do end up getting on medical treatment, there's a side effect barrier where there are huge mental and physical side effects for patients that are on these medications: nausea, dizziness, physical pain, vomiting. So if a patient can't tolerate a treatment, they don't stay on the treatment. Therefore, the treatment isn't effective. And frankly, these treatments are not very easy to use. There's a lot of challenges with being abstinent and maintaining that. Many times, patients are required to make a radical change in their lifestyle. They have to distance themselves from family and friends and other triggers that may tempt them to drink. They have to avoid social events where alcohol is being served. And we all know that most social events, there is alcohol being served. So therefore, patients just don't want to try to maintain this abstinence, and it's a major challenge for them. Our research has told us what patients don't want. What they don't want is they don't want side effects. They don't want painful injections. They don't want to sit around in a self-help circle talking about their problems. What they do want is to reduce their drinking down to levels that are considered healthy. They want to moderate their drinking. They don't want to fight with their family and friends. They don't want to admit that they have a major problem. They want to deal with this in the privacy of their own home. Now, we believe that ADO4 has been designed to meet that market need that's currently being unmet and allow for the management of heavy drinking. So our drug is a new mechanism of action that's designed to reduce cravings and impulse. It's a serotonin 3 blocker. Serotonin 3 is believed to impact the dopamine reward system, which can lower the impulse and the cravings to drink, which is a big driver when it comes to addiction. One of the major differences is our drug will be designed and labeled as a reduction of heavy drinking. So therefore, you don't need to be abstinent before you get on the drug, and abstinence is not required to stay on the drug. And really, the research has shown that the real problems that come from AUD come from that heavy drinking, not from just drinking. It's got a good safety profile. It's a repurposed drug on Dansitron that's been on the market for 30 years. So it's got a long-term safety profile. And our drug will be at a much lower dose. It's orally dosed twice a day, no injections or anything like that. And one thing that really sets us apart is our drug is a precision medicine. So it's based on a companion diagnostic that's a genetic test. That's the first thing a patient will do. If they have a certain genotype, they're a candidate for treatment with our drug. If they don't have a certain genotype, then they would not be a candidate. We think that really is going to set us apart in terms of the treatments that are available in the market today. A little bit more on the drug, as I mentioned, it's a repurposed drug of a Dansitron. Now, Dansitron has been on the market at much higher doses under the brand name Zofran since 1991 as a treatment for nausea and vomiting associated with chemotherapy. Our dose is an ultra low dose, 1/12, the lowest dose that's already on the market. So significantly lower dose, which is one of the reasons there's so few side effects with our treatment. We've done a phase 2 study, phase 2B study, and a phase 3 study. Our phase 3 study, which was onward, was reported out in 2022. It was a 300 patient study. Now, we missed the overall endpoint in that study for the entire population in the study, but we did further analysis within the study looking at certain subgroups and certain genotypes. And for some of those genotypes, the data was extremely well received. The patients did extremely well, and I'll cover that in a few moments. I mentioned before that our drug is a precision medicine, so a little bit more on the genetic test that we hope will be a companion diagnostic with this treatment. It's a simple genetic test. Patients are given it, and it measures whether they have certain genotypes. Now, what our research has shown from talking to physicians is they think that there's a huge opportunity for this genetic test to increase patients seeking treatment and also increase compliance once those patients are on treatment. And the reason for that is what doctors have told us in our research is that many times when a patient's in for a physical and the doctor sees certain things in their lab work or based on the survey that the patient fills out, they've seen that there's been an increase in drinking and they bring that up. And many times the patient reacts in a negative way. They say, wait a minute, why are you bringing that up? That's not me. I don't have a problem. And then the conversation stops if it even started at that point. What the doctors have told us when we talked about our companion diagnostic is they would have the same conversation, but then they would add the fact that, there's a test that we can give you. And based on your genetic profile, there may be a drug that can help you reduce your drinking. And what they believe would happen is that the patient would react differently and say, yeah, that's interesting. I would like to know that. And they go for it and have the test. Because what it does from a doctor's perspective is it removes this issue away from a behavioral issue for the patient to perhaps it's a medical issue. Perhaps it's not even just a medical issue, something in their genetic profile, but maybe there's something in their family history that helps explain why they have an issue with drinking. Now, our research with insurers and payers has shown that they like this approach as well, because what it does is it helps ensure efficacy. So therefore, if a patient has a certain genotype and qualifies for treatment, the data has already shown at that point that the drug should be effective. And that's what the payers really want. They don't want to reimburse for a drug that is not effective. And they do want to reimburse for a drug that shows a benefit to patients. And the genetic test will help ensure that. So we think that's going to really be a significant driver in being able to increase the uptake once this drug is approved. A little bit more about the other treatments on the market. I mentioned some of them all have issues. So this slide takes a snapshot of the other drugs that are currently available on the market. And if you look at the major characteristics which we believe are required for a drug to be successful in treating AUD, things like novel mechanism of action, oral dosing, designed to reduce heavy drinking, no abstinence required to be on the treatment, and genetic targeting, you see that ADO4 is the only drug on this list that checks all the boxes. I'll touch on just a couple of these other drugs on this slide. Antabuse, the one on the far right, is designed to be a significant deterrent to drinking. So first of all, the patient has to go through alcohol withdrawal and be abstinent before they're on the drug. And then once they're on the drug, if they have any alcohol, even a sip in some cases of alcohol in their system, they have a violent reaction, nausea, vomiting, body aches. Sometimes the reaction can be so significant that the patient has to be rushed to the emergency room. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know many people that are going to want to be on a drug like that. Vivitrol, one of the leading drugs in this category, is a painful injection that's given once a month. And again, patients need to be abstinent before they can have that treatment. So we think the way ADO4 is designed, it fits nicely into what patients are really looking for in terms of treatment for AUD. A little bit more on the Onward phase 3 study that I talked about earlier. It was a study that was conducted in Europe, 6 countries in Europe, 300 patients were enrolled. This trial was based on 2 categories of drinkers. They were pre-stratified into these categories based on their drinking levels. Very heavy drinkers, which meant they drank on drinking days. When they drank more than 10 drinks on those days. The other category was heavy drinkers. They still drank quite a bit, but they drank 6 to 10 drinks on days that they drank. Those were the 2 categories, and about 63% of the patients in our study were in the heavy drinker category. We also enrolled patients based on genotypes. So they took that genetic test, and if they had one of 4 genotypes, then they were included in the study. If they did not have one of those 4, then they were not in the study. As I mentioned, the overall study population missed their primary endpoint. And I'll cover that in a second as to what drove that. This slide takes a look at the endpoint for the US FDA. And that endpoint is based on what's called a responder analysis, which means the number of patients that have 0 heavy drinking days. And a heavy drinking day is defined as, for a man, 5 or more drinks in a single day, and for a woman, 4 or more drinks. So if they went the last 2 months of a 6-month study, month 5 and 6, if they went those 2 months without any heavy drinking days, they were considered a responder. And the FDA values that as accepts that as a clinically meaningful endpoint that an AUD drug could get approved on. This slide takes a look at our results. As I mentioned, when we looked at the phase 3 study and missed the primary endpoint, we did subgroup analysis. We looked at it by genotype, and we looked at it based on those drinking levels. This is our data we saw in that analysis based on drinking level and genotype. So you see in the bottom right box, you'll see the 4 genotypes that are in the study: AG, LLTT, AC, and GG. And you'll see that the AG genotype had a p-value of 0.021, which would be statistically significant for that responder analysis endpoint. And you'll see that the other 3 genotypes did not meet statistical significance. And that's why the overall population in the study, when you put it all together, missed the primary endpoint. We saw another genotype, GG, which on this slide you see did not meet statistical significance, but based on the way the data was trending in month 6, and the fact that there was a relatively small number of patients in the study at 24, we believe that GG could possibly also meet significance if we extended the study a little bit longer and enrolled more patients. Now, we took all this data and went and reviewed it with FDA, and they viewed it as very supportive in terms of how we move forward. We would move forward with just the AG group and the heavy drinker group. So we would exclude those very heavy drinkers and repeat the study. Now, FDA needs you to repeat the study because you can't based on approval on a post hoc analysis, which is what this is. But it's very encouraging for us that we now see a way forward with seeking approval in the United States. The next near-term catalyst for us is that we initiated earlier this year, back in May, a pharmacokinetic study for ADL4. This was a pre-planned and pre-budgeted study. It's going to be low cost and expected to take about 6 months. Now, this is a study that's required that you do for any drug that's repurposed. It allows us to bridge the bioavailability of our drug, ADL4, to the drug we're repurposing, ondansetron or Zofran or a genetic version of it. This study is going to give us a lot of data that's going to help us design the phase 3 study that we need to move forward with. So we're going to report out on this study, top line results in early fourth quarter, take that information, package it with what we've already learned from the prior study, and take this to the FDA, hopefully later this year or early next year. The study also fulfills a necessary component of our partnering strategy because our partners are also watching and monitoring how we do with this study. So this is a very meaningful next step for us as a company. 2024 has been a very active year for ADIL so far. We made significant progress in laying the groundwork to advance ADL4 to phase 3. We completed $8.6 million so far in gross financings in a very challenging capital market, but that money allows us to have some breathing room and can extend our cash runway into the second half of 2025. We also were issued 3 new patents and filed for a 4th patent that, if that's approved, would extend our IP to 2044. And as I mentioned, we launched the PK study, which is going to provide vital information for our discussions with the FDA and potential partners. So our next steps are to finalize our plans to achieve potential commercial launch of ADL4 by 2027. We need to complete the pharmacokinetic study to optimize the elements we need for our phase 3. We then need to package that with our clinical development plan, take that to FDA and review that with them. Also review the study protocol and statistical analysis with FDA. All things going well, get the green light to proceed and launch our phase 3 program. We're also at the same time continuing to advance our discussions with potential strategic partners. Ideally, we'd like to partner ADL4, and we ideally would like a partner to fund the phase 3 program and commercialize ADL4, assuming a successful regulatory outcome. A little bit on the total addressable market. Needless to say, this is based on estimated potential patients out there. It's a huge market. If you assume just 20% of the patients that I showed you earlier are estimated to suffer from AUD, and that 20% will represent the AG and the GG genotype, and you got all those patients, and we're not saying we would, of course, but if you got all those patients just from orders of magnitude, that would be a $40 billion market. Now, if you slice that pie into those patients I said before are just estimated to seek any kind of treatment today, if you got all of those patients, that would be $3.4 billion. And if you just got a small slice of that slice, we believe ADL4 would be extremely successful and a huge commercial success. So overall, I believe that we have built a great addiction-focused company with a refined strategy now and a clear path on how to get ADL4 to the market to help the estimated millions of patients that are suffering from alcohol use disorder. It's just a matter of continuing to execute our plan. Longer term, there are expansion opportunities for ADL4 as evidence for our patents in things like obesity, opiate use disorder, and other addictions. We got the team that can do it, and I look forward to updating you in the future. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. And I wanted to thank all of our presenters for taking part in what has been a very productive and informative series of presentations. We appreciate the time and effort that went into preparing all the presentations. We are very grateful for your flexibility and your presence at our conference this year. Thank you again from the H.C. Wainwright team.